Thank you.
Tracey, it's wonderful to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out today.
Great. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You bet. So let's begin our conversation before we get into your life as a social entrepreneur by asking you this. 5 years ago, this pandemic was raging and it was doing different things around the globe. You're in South Africa, we're in America. So, how did you survive that 2020 pandemic and how has it radiated into your world today?
Yeah, it was an interesting time in South Africa. Our business is in a lot of our business is helping unemployed South Africans start businesses. And so, literally overnight, people's businesses were shut down. But because most of the individuals are in the informal economy, the actual informal economy was flourishing.
Yeah.
Because people stayed closer to home, our malls were closed, but people still needed food and clothing. So whilst initially it was tough, it actually was a almost like a booming time for many of the women that we support. Interestingly, South Africa took a really strong stance against alcohol and banned alcohol. I think we were probably the most unique in the world. And we really have an alcohol problem in South Africa. Many of our communities are ravaged by the abuse of alcohol. And a lot of the positive stories is people saying like, wow, we actually are experiencing such warmth and um, the sort of feeling of our communities have changed because of the ban on alcohol. So there were sort of lots of silver linings. Obviously, there was lots of hardship and trauma, but those were certainly two of the silver linings that we saw.
That's interesting. I haven't heard that before, but that makes sense because there was a part of that time where abuse of substances really kind of skyrocketed. And if that wasn't the case, I think there would be a much healthier way that things would have gone.
Yeah, well, actually, they came at it from a health point of view, saying a lot of the casualties coming into hospitals were alcohol-related problems, whether they were stabbings or motor vehicle accidents, and they wanted to cut down on the trauma units. And so they chose to ban alcohol, which was really interesting at the
Yeah, that
time.
is. Yeah, that's interesting. So let's get into the heart and soul of the work that you do. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of kids. They always get the truth out of us. They're 12 years old. It's career day. And one of the kids in the back of the room is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
Yeah, we essentially help unemployed South Africans. We have a very high unemployment rate, more than, depends who you ask, but somewhere between 30 and 40% is our unemployment rate. Large part of those are mothers, and we really help unemployed South Africans start businesses in a number of different sectors. Most of them are in the trading sector, where we source the excess merchandise that's in certain supply chains. So we work in the fashion, fast fashion. Retailers donate all of the excess product to us, end of season merchandise, customer returns, returned appliances, excess fabric. And we use that as the fuel to get these businesses started. And then we have businesses that focus on early learning, where we help women start outstanding early learning centers as small businesses as well. So anything that essentially where there's a market in the communities in which our mostly women live, 90% of our participants are women. Because if you help a woman, you do help a child. And that's our intention is really to eradicate poverty in families. And we have to start by economic activity, but then that flowing down to the added benefits when we're working with children, with mothers and families.
So, what did you want to be when you were 12 years old? What was your dream job?
Well, I always say I wanted to be a retailer. When I was about 5, my grandfather gave me a toy till, and I played with that like you can't believe that my birthday's in July. By about September, that was broken, and I think he gave me another one for Christmas. So I've always been a retailer at heart, and I spent most of my career in retail. And in a sense, this is sort of the social side of retail now. We're actually mopping up retail waste and using it for good. And we're still retailers at heart by helping women run businesses that are mostly in the retail sector.
So, take me back to the beginnings of your life. Where were you born and raised? What were these What were these essential building blocks that were woven into who you have become to help people to be an entrepreneur, to have this vision? How did all of these things get cultivated and grow into who you are?
Yes, I grew up in South Africa, in sort of the middle of apartheid as a child, not necessarily understanding of what apartheid was because we were sold the propaganda, the lot of stuff that we didn't know about actually as children in South Africa, and grew up in a almost a new development where young families were moving in. Always say in our road there were more children and dogs than there were adults, and we roamed freely and never considered myself an entrepreneur until I started this work 15 years ago. But actually, if I look at how I grew up, I had my till. I was starting businesses in this neighborhood with my best friend. Everything from collecting snails for 1 cent to car washes to chicken businesses. We were hustlers in our neighborhood, and we were doing it really because we were playing and having fun. But therein, is the sort of early signs of creativity. And then the other sort of trigger for us as South Africans growing up again, around apartheid, reflecting on our privilege and how we benefited from apartheid, really asking ourselves, well, how can we help build this country? How can we help around financial inclusion, economic inclusion for those that were marginalized during apartheid? And that was definitely a driving force in why I decided to leave the corporate world and start something that was more, I suppose, impactful and meaningful.
So, what did those years of being in corporate teach you and embolden you in the way that you go about your work? Because I know personally, I spent time in corporate America and it just made me charge harder into the things that were passion projects because you get into that environment and it can be stifling for people. For some people, it's fine. For others, when you get out, you realize that you almost needed a detox from that environment. So, how did that kind of build the backbone for what you're doing today?
Well, I think corporate taught me how to think big. And it taught me how to build a great business. I was fortunate to work early on I'm a chartered accountant by profession, so that teaches you about the language of business and the systems of business. I spent early parts of my career in sort of consulting across a broad range of business sectors with one of the big five, and then kind of dived into retail. But I happened to work for one of the best retailers in the country, an incredibly values-based business and an extremely well-run business and a great culture. And so it really taught me the kind of businesses I wanted to build in a sense. But, bringing in, not just profit. So I ended up being head of finance for one of the largest retailers. And whilst it is a retailer that has purpose at its heart, very responsible retailer, at the end of the day, big business is driven by profit.
Yeah.
And I think, being in finance was making some really difficult calls. You always had the red pen out and you were cutting budgets and changing people's lives by the stroke of a red pen. And kind of did that for 10 years and felt like it was never ending. You're always chasing the profit number, whether there's COVID happening or some other crisis in the world. It doesn't really matter. Shareholders want the same growth number year after year, and it's kind of relentless. It's exciting, but it's relentless. And so, I always say I had my midlife crisis at the age of 39, which seems to be about the standard age,
Yeah.
and asked myself, what is the meaning of life, essentially? What was I put on this planet to do? Surely it was more than just grow shareholder returns
Yeah.
for people. Um,
So who's been that inspiration? Who's been that driving force, hero for you to become who you are, to find your actual purpose?
Yeah, so I think that the general term is mothers. So I am a mother of three, and had other mothers essentially raising my children. So in South Africa, we're fortunate to have incredible women who are our home helpers. And the woman that came into my life had five children of her own and was a widow, and so was raising my children to earn money to raise her children, and really just a deep understanding of the struggle of that. It's sort of my first connection with poverty in South Africa, and how difficult that is. And I think when you grow up in privilege, I think we are so disconnected from real world problems. And so just being connected to her, she was a great influence in my life. She raised my children with the same amount of love that she raised her own children. And like, how do you do that? And so really, if I could, her name is Beauty. She's now fully retired. But if I could help just one beauty, have less, have raise her children and give her children everything that every mother wants to do, that would make life worth living. And so every woman that's in our program, I see her as a beauty. She is wants the best for her children, and we need to smooth that path for her.
So let me ask you this. What's been your philosophy on balancing doing the best job that you can do, but also taking care of your soul and your family? How does that work for you? What motivates you every day to get up, to holistically do everything in the best possible way?
Yeah, that's not easy. I think when you're mission driven, and it's not a job. This is so much beyond a job. I did this when I was in the corporate world. I still do it now. Work-life balance is not easy. And I do tend to put work sometimes before my family. God gave me a little gift at the age of 43. I had a third child, and I think she was sent to remind me to have balance, that I had essentially a second chance. My first children were raised by Beauty. I wanted to raise my third child myself. So I think COVID really helped in terms of doing things remotely. That's been very, very helpful. I try as best to stay in a routine around healthy eating, healthy, grounding myself in activities that remind me to not just be in my head, but also to be in my body and to take care of my body. And I think as I get older, that taking care of myself becomes more important, not less important. Certainly in my 30s and 40s, I took care of everything else other than myself. And it comes at a price. I think you pay that price later in life. You don't necessarily know you're paying the price now, but you can pay a heavy price later in life if you don't take care of yourself. So I can't say I have a good report card. It's something I have to work really hard on, not to lose myself in my work.
So let me ask you this. If you could meet one person alive on the planet that's inspirational, that's doing wonderful work, that might help you on your journey, who would you love to meet and talk to?
Well, I'm a South African, and I would have loved to have spent time with Nelson Mandela. I got to touch his hand for one brief moment while he was coming down a procession, and I felt like I'd been touched by something magnetic.
Yeah.
Um, so, I think we were, whilst he became a global figure, um, you know, what he went through. I mean, like so many years of imprisonment and persecution, and to come out with a positive attitude and wanting to build a nation and not persecute the people that persecuted you. There's something really, really unbelievable about that, really. And like, I think he just kind of I'd love to have got into his head, like into his feelings, like how do you overcome the anger, the rage of what you've been through and still continue to build a nation. So I know it sounds very cliche, but I think being a South African makes it sort of, and we had too short of a time with him
Yeah.
in South Africa. If he'd been our leader, in terms of a president for longer, I think we would have built a more solid foundation. It was just a little, only 4 years as sort of in leadership. Obviously, he lived a lot longer. It's almost, yeah, it's sad actually for us as a nation, because I
Yeah.
think so much leadership changed since then, and he could have solidified the work that he came out to do, really.
I think we feel that way about Obama in America.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, so let me
yeah.
ask you this. If I was to put you in front of a room of everybody that knows you in a business sense, from corporate America, the work you're doing now, and you could swim through that sea of people and go to the front of that room and tell them one fun story. The first concert you went to, jumping out of an airplane, just a really fun story that might humanize you. What would you tell that room of people?
That's a very difficult question. Um, when I was young, I loved to do drama, so I used to go to drama classes, and it was actually the only thing that we could do that crossed the racial boundaries, actually, which was really interesting. And I can't really sing at all. I can act, but I can't sing at all. In fact, I was expelled from the choir, and had to do the headmaster's filing when the choir was compulsory. And on the day, this drama class actually had a TV program, which was recorded on a Sunday, and it was called TikTok Time. And on the day of this recording, the person who was the main actor lost her voice. And so I had to do the acting, and but they recorded her voice later. So the TV program came out with me acting and her voice. And I think it was the most hilarious thing ever. In that, if I could sing, that's how I'd like to sound. So I have a deep wish that one day maybe I will learn to sing, but it hasn't been proven right yet. So can't sing, can't dance is the is the mantra that unfortunately are the things that I wish I could do that I can't do.
That's a great story. So let me ask you this. Of everything that you've done and accomplished in your life, what are you the proudest of?
Sure. I think there are just so many stories. But when a woman tells you that her child, I remember one woman, she herself had a disability. She had lost part of her arm, and she was an older woman when she came to us. And when she comes to you 5 years later and says, "My son is now studying medicine because I could afford to pay school fees and I could afford to enroll him, pay his, tuition fees for university." That for me is the sort of the whole point of doing this.
Yeah.
If we can really help the next generation, because I think once you've got one generation out of poverty, or even just one member in a family out of poverty, and we know that education is the ticket to doing that, then it's so much easier for the next generations. And so that's sort of, I sort of see a visual picture of just one person rising out of the difficulty and bringing the others with them. And when a mother can do that, and also just the pure joy that she gets, because every mom wants the best for their children, and so often she can't give them the best. But when she gets that joy of being able to say, "I did this. Nobody else did it for her. She did it." That for me is what this is all about. Sort of one mother at a time.
So at the end of the day, Tracey, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
What's my perception of me? I'll tell you what I think most people think of me, which is I am very driven, and but really around the mission. And I'm full of ideas. So everybody, there's an in-house joke really that um, most of my ideas come when I'm in the shower, which apparently is quite normal. The shower or driving is often the other one where you're super relaxed. And everybody jokes, Tracey, we mustn't let Tracey have a shower because she's going to come up with another idea. And then in Cape Town, we had the hectic water restrictions. Everybody was celebrating because I wasn't producing as many ideas because our showers were like 30-second showers. So yeah, full of ideas, very passionate about what I do. But I think also has a great sense of humor. So I don't take myself too seriously. I take my mission seriously, but don't take myself too seriously.
Right on. So if anyone wants to dig into your mission, they want to learn more, they want to reach out, any of the good business, where do they go?
So we've got two websites, Taking Care of Business, and the website is easy, tcb.org.za. And then our other work around early learning is under growecd.org.za.
Okay, excellent. Tracey, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you for your story. Thank you for your time. Best of luck with everything.
Great, super. Thanks, Joe. Take care.
Thank you.
Looking to get new clients to your business through cold calling or email marketing? At Agency Y, they envision a world in which small and big companies have equal chances to win new customers in the market. Their purpose is to bring parity and reduce the gap between large and small firms with the help of their cold calling and cold email marketing services. Use the code Joe Dimino 10 at www.agencyyy.org/coldcallingjoe.php or www.agencyyy.org/emailmarketingjoe.php to get 10% off your first order. This is Joe Dimino of Neon Jazz and Famous Interviews, and I stand behind Agency Y to meet your business dreams.